Welcome back to the Unapologetic Podcast. Today starts the 6 episode series all on You Don't Have to. So, this is all things that you don't have to do to be successful as an online business owner. They're things that we hear all of the time that, have been said. The whole online narrative rhetoric that is commonly perpetuated online of different things. If you don't do this, you're not going to be successful or you're not going to make the money you want to make. You should do this so that you can reach your goals, get what you want. So I'm going to be challenging a bunch of those things and actually talking through them, talking through the nuance of these things and how you don't actually have to. Because it comes back to the same thing that I say all the time. This gets to look the way that you want it to. No one else except for you gets to define this. So we are going to throw away all the things people are saying or that we hear online around the things that, quote unquote, you have to do or you should do or whatever to be successful and make money and make good money online, because it can look however you want to. Other than like the legal things, which is kind of funny because just a little like side note, because this is actually, this is so weird. In the last, I don't know, 5-ish days, I have gotten multiple requests for people to come on my podcast. And no, like, plus talking about like legal things. They want to talk about tax evasion. And I'm like, why the fuck would absolutely the fuck not. So that's been weird. And then they do the whole, if you have a podcast, you are probably familiar with this. They do the whole circling back. And I'm like, don't circle back. Circle like far away. No, this is an absolute not ever, ever. No. It has been really weird podcast pitch week. Anyways, so we aren't talking about like the legal things that you do have to do for your business. You have to pay taxes. Like, fuck, this is wild. But anyways, that's not my area of expertise either. It was also not the area of expertise of these people, which was also very, very weird. But anyway, that's a big tangent side note. So today's episode. You don't have to have a big audience or a huge email list to be successful. You don't have to have tons of followers on Instagram or like the 10,000 plus email list to be successful and make money online. Even though this is something that we hear and we feel, and like people do talk about this, but then it goes back to this again, and they're like, actually, you kind of do. And there's someone who has made a freaking course all around, getting 10,000 people on your email list. You don't like, that's not something that you have to have in order to be successful. And I'm going to talk about this more and why, like, putting effort into something like that might be the wrong place to be putting your effort fully into. Yes, you need to grow your email list 1000%, but putting, a shit ton of work into growing it to 10,000 subscribers when you want to work one-on-one with people doesn't really make sense, right? So we're going to talk about that. Like, I have heard this so many times. And even at face value, it, like I said, is just not true. It very much depends on your business. This is not a blanket statement for everyone. And that's a lot of these things. Kind of what happens is they're put out there as these statements, these shoulds that, you know, this is what business should look like for everyone. What are you even talking about right now? No. We all have different businesses. We do different things in our business for one, so that's just weird. But we all run our businesses differently. We work with people differently. We have different lives behind the scenes of our businesses. There are so many different things that go into what you actually need for your business. And that's why these blanket statements just make absolutely zero sense. And if someone is telling you that you absolutely need something like this without knowing anything about your business, run the other way because they don't know. They have no clue. And it's interesting. This was just so weird. I saw someone on Threads that was posting about this constantly, and this was recently. And it was just different forms of saying the exact same thing. It was actually really weird because it was over and over and over again. And it was literally, if you don't have, thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of followers, you will not make money online. I don't believe you're making money online. If you don't have an email list that is growing exponentially all the time. I don't believe that you are making money online. You can't be making money online. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? It's statements like that that just do not make any sense. Because again, it depends on the business. And we're going to go into, some people do need higher volume, some people do not. But blanket statements like this, no, like it's so dumb. It does not make any sense. And this person was just doubling down constantly on this. And I made a post and I was like, just FYI, you actually don't need tens of thousands of followers or subscribers on your email list to make money or to be successful in business. And there was a lot of people who, were like, thank you for saying that. I absolutely agree. I've never had that many and I make good money. And I was like, yeah, I know, because it depends on what your business needs, but it's these statements that we hear, and depending on the person who says it and depending on their reach, their audience, it can get this traction and it can land in a way where it's like, maybe then I don't know, maybe that is the thing that I need. And this is where the huge problem happens. If you believe that and you think that that's actually the problem that you need to solve right now, or the thing that's going to get you more clients, and then you go all in on growing your audience or growing your email list. And I'm not saying, they're obviously be putting out, because I think that you should be growing your email list at the same time, all of the time. That is one thing I actually do think is very, very smart to be doing, because none of us should be relying solely on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever the social media platforms that we do not own. So, in some capacity, you should always be growing your email list. However, there's a big difference between making sure that you have freebies available, things that people can opt in for, and going really hard and making that your sole focus to really grow, right? And if you are focusing just on that, when the real issue to you getting more clients is actually connecting deeper with the people that are right in front of you, especially when you only have capacity for, let's say, like 10 max clients at a time. For example, let's say you work one-on-one with people, your capacity is like 10 clients or even like 15, let's say. That's a lot of work to be putting into the wrong thing for not getting the results that you want. Because if you are focusing on getting this high volume versus connecting deep with the people that you're going to be working one-on-one with, you're not going to get the same results. Sure, you might grow this big email list, but if you aren't focusing on the conversations that you need to have to really connect with people, that's where the gap is going to be, right? And then you have this big list and you've done all that work, but you're still having the work to put into the conversations. So you're just delaying what you actually need to do. So it comes back to the number one question: what does your business actually need? That's what it comes down to. It doesn't matter what anyone else is saying, you have to do. That's what all of these episodes are about, right? It does not matter. What does your business actually need? That is the most important thing to ask, to look at, to answer, because then you are going to get the results that you want. So if you are doing mostly like one-on-one small group program, you have a lower capacity for clients. Myself, for example, I don't need a huge following. I don't need a huge email list. I've never had. Like I have now just over 1,300 followers on Instagram. I don't really post on, I post sometimes on Facebook in groups on there, but I don't use my actual Facebook profile for anything. And my Facebook group got flagged for something absolutely ridiculous that I shared from someone else, and they were mad because it was about Meta glasses. I don't even know if I talked about this on here, but anyways, that's a side tangent we're not going into today. So I can't even post anything on there anyways. So basically, I have 1,300 followers on Instagram. I have I have a small email list, but it's very engaged. It's very engaged, and I clean it up very regularly, and I really clean it up. Because if you're not opening my emails and it's not doing anything for you and it's decreasing my open rate, I'm kicking you off my list. You can resubscribe. That's fine. I don't care. Like, and it's nothing either way, not an issue. But I really also, for the deliverability aspect of it, this is something that, you should be thinking about because it does hurt that. And if a lot of people are just sitting there stagnant on your list, not opening your emails, it will hurt the deliverability and it'll start going into spam promotions, like the places where you don't want to go. And then people just aren't even seeing your emails. And then what's the point, right? But I have a small list, but an extremely good open rate. So it's usually between, now I've gotten it up to like 53 to 60%, which is kind of insane. So that is good for me. I don't need a massive audience. And when you're working one-on-one and you have, small group programs, you don't need a shit ton of people, or you get a lot of referrals, things like that. Yes, you still need people coming in because there will be turnover. It's not that you don't ever need anyone. And that's why I'm saying always be growing your email list in some capacity. But the most important thing is really creating connections with the right people. So, what does that look like? How can you do that? Because spending a ton of time on growing your audience versus creating connections is solving the wrong problem. Because if you have, 10,000 people on your email list, sure, that's a lot of people. But if you can only work with 15 people at a time, and if you have people that stick with you for a long time, that means not very many spots are opening. And you're really putting your time into that. When spots do open and you haven't created those connections, it's harder to get people into those slots versus, like, when I send out an email, I generally have a few people that are responding to my emails, I reply back all the time. Like, I love doing that. I love talking to people. And I know there are some people that I would say I'm friends with, like online, and they have bigger audiences and we DM back and forth. They do this as well, and they actually put time into creating those connections because that's the piece that matters. It also goes back to the whole AI conversation that I had last week. This is truly what makes you stand out, and not only from AI, but from the people that aren't doing this, from the people that are putting time into just growing this huge list or this huge audience. And then, you've been in, I'm sure, the programs or worked with someone where you feel like just another number. And you feel like after you've paid them, then it's like, okay, now what? That is not ever how I want anyone to feel when I work with someone. I really, really value that connection piece. Because not only do I want to give you the best support I can, I want you to succeed. I want all those things for you. But even before anyone becomes a client, even when you're just on my email list or, whatever, if we're DMing on Instagram, I want, that is a real relationship. That's not just a fake thing where I'm like, ooh, one day you'll be a client. That's not how I think about this, you know? And it's kind of shifting that mindset. It also goes back to how we hate those people that are DMing you all the time and they're like, hey, how's your business going? Or you follow them and like that's the first message that you get. Oh my God. I could do a whole podcast episode about that too. That could be a you don't have to. It's not. I've already planned them out, but could be. However, if you are doing mostly one-on-one small group programs and stuff, a big audience, a super huge email list, that is, yes, like growing those things is good because you know, you need fresh people coming in, but that is not generally the primary focus of the problem, quote unquote, to solve, right? Now, if you're looking at, you do have a membership or a group program that does have a lot of capacity. If you do have something that people are buying a lot of, let's say you have products that could sell like hundreds, something like that, audience growth does matter at that point. Then you do want more people. You want more eyes on that. You want a lot more people to be seeing that, to be coming through, because we also know conversion rate versus how many people are actually following you or on your email list. The conversion rate from that is not 100%. So you do need the larger size to actually get the conversions that you are looking for. The thing still to keep in mind, it's not just getting the followers and subscribers. And I'm sure we've all, you know, heard this story. The person who had, I think it was like millions of followers, I can't remember at this point, but they had so many followers on Instagram and couldn't sell 36 shirts. It comes down to connection. Connection is everything at every level, no matter how big you are, because I have seen this firsthand with a few people who have massive audiences who are very well known and they wanted to sell programs and attempted to do that and had a very, very hard time because it doesn't just happen. Even for people who have a huge audience, like this is the whole thing. The huge audience size, the big email list, that is not the piece that automatically translates into all of these sales, all of this money. That's not what does it, right? It is really the connection. It's why people would even want to buy this from you. Do they need the thing? Like, there's so much more that goes into this versus just having this huge audience or all of these people on your email list. So you don't have to have a huge audience or thousands on your email list. You really don't. It, again, depends on your business. But I absolutely 1000% believe connection is the key piece that matters most, no matter if you work one-on-one with people or in small groups or you have both, or with large groups of clients, if you have a membership, if you are selling products, anything like that, the connection piece is always the thread through both of those. And this is also why I say automate tasks, not connection or relationships. That also applies here because it goes back to not having those, AI conversations in the DMs. Automate tasks that you can get off your plate so you can go talk to people. That's what people want. And I'm not saying have like thousands of conversations over like, I don't know, just little things or whatever, but really putting time into the connection and the conversations, that's the piece that's going to pay off. And there's always a way to keep that connection piece in, even if you have a high volume business, and that's the way that you're going to stand out. This is one thing and I hate saying like I promise you, but I pretty much can promise like that's the way that you are going to stand out. Because another thing that we've all heard is the people that like won't talk to you unless you pay them, right? Which to me is the most batshit stupid thing I've ever heard. That's just, it's ignorant, honestly. It's gross. But like I've also said, I know people and I talk to them all the time who have big audiences, who have a number of followers, like hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram. We have DM conversations. Like the connection piece really does matter. And it can happen when you are really looking at setting up your business properly and looking at the right things in your business versus how can you get out of the conversation piece, right? And this is the most important for sure for like one-on-one and when you're working in close proximity to people. 1000%. Super important. It always blows my mind when the people who say that they won't talk to you are also the ones that want you to pay them like tens of thousands of dollars for like a month of coaching or whatever the hell. I'm like, what? Who's doing this? Who? No, that is so, that's just so insane and backwards to me. But anyways, so that's the first. You don't have to. You don't have to have like tons and tons and tons of followers. You don't have to have this massive email list. It really depends on your business. Connection matters the most. Those are the main takeaways. I would love to hear your thoughts. So let me know. Next week, sneak peek for next week for the You Don't Have To, it's about team. We all hear about team online, so that's a sneak peek for next week's episode. And I will let you know until August 31st. When you sign up for the 6-week intensive, you'll still receive $500 off, and we can work together on creating the strategy and implementing systems for your next launch or refining one of your offers. Of course, without needing a huge audience, focusing on the connection piece, unless you do need to grow your audience because you have a membership or you're selling products or whatever, then we will also look at what does that look like? What makes sense for you? Where are your people at? How can we capitalize on that? All of those things. So that's the 6-week intensive. And of course, you can check out Impact. The waitlist is now open, and I'm so excited for that. We are starting at the end of September. So go check that out, get your name on the wait list. And there's a little bonus for anyone who is on the wait list and for if you sign up from the wait list. So definitely, if you are interested, get your name on that. And if you like the episode, give it a 5-star rating and review. I would so appreciate it. And as always, go after everything that you fucking want and be unapologetic about it.